しましたの？見せてくださいな。
素晴らしい出来だよ。
やだ、先生ったら冗談ばっかり。
冗談だって。この絵のどこが冗談なんだ。
だって私の美しさの 10% も描き出してないじゃないの。
Oh, Gyo, the fish one. Gyo has a weird reputation in both Junji Ito's fan base as well as the horror manga community as a whole. It's part of the big three. Junji Ito is mostly known for his short, one-shot horror stories. Many of the Junji Ito books that you can actually buy are just collections of his stories. But along with Uzumaki and Tomie, Gyo is one of Junji's full-length graphic novels. There are other long-form works by Ito, but these three are the three that are the most significant.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy.
I've seen some say that Gyo is Junji Ito's absolute worst work, and I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but I really don't agree with that. However, Gyo is still important to our discussion today. Not because of the actual manga itself, but rather what's packed in it. Because while I don't think Gyo is Ito's worst work, what's contained within it probably is. If you got the Gyo Fishy Fart Double Fun Pack, aka the 2-in-1 edition omnibus that collects both volumes, you also got 2 of Junji Ito's one-shot stories included with it. One of those is one of Junji Ito's most well-known and beloved stories, The Enigma of Amigata Fault. You might not recognize the name, but you do know the story. It's the one about the holes, and it has the fucking thing at the end. But the other story included is the one I want to talk about today. Now, I said that this is Ito's worst story rather than Gyo, but I also want to point out that they really aren't comparable. When comparing Ito's works, I've usually seen people comparing Uzumaki, Tomie, and Gyo to the full release collections. This is mostly because people are comparing the collection of stories as a whole. Both Uzumaki and Smashed will give you a couple hundred pages of Ito's horror, but one will give you a more variety of stories, while one will give you less stories, but they're longer, if that makes any sense. I bring this up also because what we are talking about today is one of Ito's shortest stories. I am of course talking about Junji Ito's horror manga one-shot, The Sad Tale of the Principal Post. Oh lord. So, this is a short story. A really short story. For context, Amigata Fault is around 40-ish pages, I believe. The Thing That Drifted Ashore, another one of his shorter works, is about 20 pages. This story is 4 pages long. You know those 4-hour-long video essays deconstructing movies that are way longer in runtime than the actual movie itself? Yeah, this is going to be the equivalent of that. But Lily, how are you possibly going to get a 20-minute video out of just deconstructing a 4-page comic? Just you wait. I'm gonna go through the plot first, but it's so damn short that, like, just go read it. It's not hard to find scans of it floating around. And of course, it goes without saying, but if you're reading scans of manga online and you like the author, make sure to buy some official copies of the books too. I'm going to run through the plot first without stopping, and then once we're through it, I'll circle back for my comments on everything. Okay, so what is this? What happens in this? So we open to a family, and they've got some guests over. And there's wine, and a big table full of food, and it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that this is a housewarming party. A character mentions that the family just had their new house built, and thanks them for inviting them over for dinner. There's sake and comments about how the house is so nice, and it's all around just happy vibes and having a good time. One of the guests asks where Dad is. Also, none of the characters have names, so I will just refer to them as their nuclear family roles. So a guest asks where Dad is, and Mom, while pouring the guest some more sake, remarks that the dad was just around not too long ago. It is here where daughter hears someone crying for help, remarking that it sounds like Dad. They quickly realize that the yelling is coming from the crawl space under the house, so Mom, daughter, and all of the guests head down there to see what's going on, and they find... this. They ask Dad what happened, and he just says that he's being crushed by a post. Yeah, no shit. Mom asks how the fuck this even happened, and Dad just says that it's a long story. Mom then says that she's going to call the carpenter what the fuck? Like, maybe call an ambulance first? No. Lily, hold your tongue. We gotta get through this first. So Dad tells her no, that this is the principal post. Basically, he's trapped underneath the main load-bearing structure, and that trying to save him might collapse the house. And Dad thinks that it would be just such a shame to destroy their brand new house. And Mom... Just push through, we're almost done. So Mom asks Dad what the hell she is supposed to do then, since, you know, this isn't exactly the type of emergency that you ever practice for. And Dad says not to do anything and to just leave him there. And so they do that. His family and friends just hang out in the crawl space and watch him die. Leave it to Dad to ruin the vibe of a good dinner party. We get one last half-page panel letting us all know that his decomposing, mangled corpse is still down there underneath the principal post. And I guess his family just lives their lives in the house knowing that Dad is rotting underneath the floorboards and there will be a fun surprise down there for whoever the next owner is. The end. Okay, so this obviously isn't Ito's most compelling work, but I want to start by talking about the things I liked. So, for starters, I keep saying this, but it's true. It's 4 pages long. Like, I counted, and there's literally 19 panels, so there really is only so much you can say about it. Now, it being short doesn't mean that there's nothing to say. I mean, Cow Tools is literally just a single illustration, and there's tons that can be said about that. Same with Heathcliff. Every Heathcliff comic is just a single illustration with a comment underneath it, and me and my wife have had extensive debates and arguments about them. I fucking hate Heathcliff. So one thing I want to start out with is that Junji Ito shines so much when it comes to short stories because he can show us so much using so little. Look at this panel right here. This is literally the second panel in the whole comic. The first panel is just an establishing shot of the house with the title, and this panel shows us everything we need to know. The food, the woman gushing about the house, the congratulations, Mom asking around if anyone wants more sake, all of the guests sitting around the table laughing. In one panel, with 3 quick word bubbles, Ito tells us everything that we need to know, and creates the context and exposition that is basically an entire first act of a story. In a longer story, what this panel tells us would be pages and pages and pages of establishing shots and dialogue and character moments. But here we get the setup for who the characters are, what they're doing, and why they're doing it, and the rest helps to reinforce the mood, showing that things have never been better leading up to the characters being struck by tragedy. And the whole story is like this. Every panel packs a punch, and this is what Ito is really good at, which is why I think his short stories are always far more memorable and beloved. Everything clicks together the best when he keeps things tight. Even Uzumaki, which many consider his magnum opus and one of the greatest mangas of all time, is technically a collection of short stories. Yeah, for those who haven't read it, Uzumaki is an anthology, kinda sorta in the loosest possible definition of the term. Every story in Uzumaki follows the same 2 characters and takes place in the same town, so I guess it's an anthology in the same way that SpongeBob is. Episodic might be a better term for it. But again, it's tight and punchy, and that's what makes Ito's works work. Even really simple things, like this panel. The first establishing shot of the house was in the day, and now this panel that's telling us that they waited by Dad's side until he passed is at night, showing us that they sat with him in that crawl space all day and into the night. And obviously the art is fantastic. I mean, it's Junji Ito. Obviously the art is going to look good. The only problem with it is the same problem with any of Ito's work, which is all of the women have Yansim syndrome, where they all have basically the exact same face, and you mostly differentiate them through their hair. But like, it's manga. You can only criticize it so far because the whole point of manga, and by extension, anime, and the anime art style, is that it's supposed to be quick. Mangaka are often expected to put out a chapter a week, and so because they have very fast deadlines with magazine publishers breathing down their necks, they need to get the art done quickly. And so that's why anime is a lot of simple lines and generic faces. Now that doesn't mean it's bad or looks bad, but some concessions do have to be made in order to crank chapters out as quickly as they do. This leads to simple lines and a lot of the same face syndrome. This is also why many art schools don't like when you quote-unquote are drawing anime, because high detail isn't really what the medium is about. Though at this point, the style has gained so much of its own identity outside of just being quick and low detailed, but many of those concessions have stuck around. Other good things. I like this panel of the mom losing her shit. I also really like this panel showing all of them huddled around down in the crawl space. I don't know what it is. I just love this pulled out shot here. More good things. More good things. So, okay. I don't know, man. Something about this story. Let me start with this. So, I love horror. It's my favorite genre in most mediums. But the biggest thing about horror literature is that I don't really ever find a lot of horror actually scary. I love horror because to me, the narratives are always the most interesting. The stories that the genre tells are always just the most compelling to me. But Junji Ito is really the only horror author that scares me, and I think the reason for that mostly comes down to two main things. One, the horrible things that happen usually happen to people who are completely innocent. I think a lot of horror has a problem of not wanting to make you feel like shit by the end of it, or alienating general audiences. It does take some nuts to put yourself in the category of, it was really fucking good, but I never want to experience it again because I felt horrible by the end. And so I feel like a lot of horror, especially low-effort horror movies, tend to make all of its characters completely unlikable assholes, except for the one that actually survives. So that way you don't feel bad about them dying. But that's not really horror. The fact that a character that you fucking hate might die isn't scary or stressful, but seeing something horrible happen to a character who absolutely does not deserve it, now that makes you feel something. When there's a threat that something might happen to them, and you are really hoping that they make it, that gets scary. And two, it revolves around a mystery that is never actually solved. I do believe that the obsession with lore in absolutely everything nowadays has had the side effect of kind of ruining the magic, so to say, in a lot of media. For example, the backrooms to me were far more interesting when it was just this strange post on 4chan and there was not much known about it. And now that it's become completely convoluted and overcomplicated because lore kept getting added on top of everything, and now it's just kind of a mess and it's not really fun anymore because there's just so much shit that's been crammed into it. There was also an analog horror series on TikTok a while back that I cannot for the life of me remember what it's called, and I cannot find the videos. It was called like the Brutal Sun Project, or the New Sun Project, or the something or other Sun Project. But anyway, it had pretty low views when I watched it, and it was an analog horror series about a biological computer system that was created out of human parts, and the videos were instructional videos from the company that built it. I remember on one of the last videos in the series, there was a comment that was saying how it's such a shame that the series was short-lived and not everything was explained, because it would have been great if they made videos detailing everything about the computer and why it was built and all of the backstory, and no. The mystery makes it interesting. The unknown is what makes it so ominous and creepy. When you explain the mystery, it stops being scary. When you show the ancient Egyptian artifact that is cursing the land, or the mad scientist who created the monster, and explain how and why he did everything he did, it's not scary anymore. You've now grounded the fantastical part of the story that made it scary. Quite often, Junji Ito never gives us full answers. Why are all of these people-shaped holes here on the side of the mountain? Why are the people here so drawn to them? How is the fish that washed up keeping all of those people alive? How did it allow humans to feed off it like parasites? Where did the planet Ramina come from? What exactly even is it? And where the fuck did Akko get those sick-ass pants? So, the principal post. It has these two important elements. These people who go through this, they don't deserve it. They're all innocent, I think. And the mystery. How did Dad get underneath the principal post? What the fuck was he even doing down there in the crawl space? He was literally just upstairs at the party. The mom said it. What the fuck was going on down there that the dad was just like, oh yeah, I gotta go ahead and leave my housewarming party that all of my friends have taken time out of their weeks to attend so I can get down into the crawl space area real quick and participate in mysterious activities. So the story has the two things that I think make Junji Ito's writing so interesting and actually scary. But like, that doesn't really make this a good story. The thing about the Principal Post is that it's really dumb. And let me be clear, the premise for most pieces of fiction is dumb if you really think about it, especially anything fantastical, especially horror. But your presentation of the story can really sell it. And that's its biggest problem. You read this story and you don't feel any fear or sadness at the tragedy or anything. It's mostly a feeling of, really? Like, this whole situation that's presented here is stupid. I've seen discussions around this story in various places online trying to pick apart the story from Ito's perspective. Like, what exactly was he trying to present to the readers here? And I've seen some people say that this is supposed to be a black comedy. Like, this was kind of supposed to be an absurdist piece that's supposed to be funny. That's not too out there to assume, since Ito did used to write comedy and gag comics when he was just starting out before his horror gained traction. And he hasn't completely abandoned that. I mean, you can see Ito's comedy writing in the autobiographical Junji Ito Cat Diaries, but I don't think this is supposed to be a black comedy because, like, it isn't funny. The situation is absurd, but it's not funny. It's actually kind of tragic that they find their loved one trapped and all they can do is just sit there all night with him and watch him die. So it's not funny, but it's also not scary. Like, I guess this is more of a drama than anything. I don't know, this is like the manga equivalent of those shitty 2-sentence horror stories that don't actually make any fucking sense. All the horror is just, oh, the guy dies. And like, that's more sad than anything. The other reason that I don't think it's supposed to be funny is because this whole thing is very obviously a pretty serious kind of metaphor. So, yeah, let's talk about that. I believe that all art is subjective in what it can mean. What I mean by that is that art has a way of speaking to you, and what you take away from it is going to wholly depend on you as a person, your experiences, your emotional and mental state during your first time experiencing it, your worldview. And art can mean something to you outside of its intended meaning. An artist or creator can come forward and explicitly state that their art means something very specific, but that piece of art can still mean something else to you outside of what its intended meaning is. And that's okay if you get something else from it, so long as you recognize that that meaning is personal and accept and understand its intended meaning along with the personal one that you find. For example, I believe that Slipknot's Vermilion is about waifuism.
Why will you elaborate on that?
No.
With that said, this story's message is so blatant, I think it's hard to interpret anything else from it. It's obviously about the role of the father in the traditional nuclear family. The dad even specifically says the line, "I'll die supporting this house." When picking apart a piece of art, it's always important to take into consideration the culture from which it was birthed. Because of anime and the touristy nature and nightlife of Tokyo, people tend to forget that Japan is a rather conservative culture, one that emphasizes the role of men as the main providers and breadwinners for their family. The Japanese salaryman often works long hours and can work significantly above 40 hours a week with or without overtime pay. They are also expected to have a dying devotion to the companies they work for. And I mean literal dying devotion. They even have a word for it, karoshi, which is death by overwork. And many don't have time to help raise their children or be with their families. But along with that, I think the story is also meant to show male stubbornness, or expected stubbornness is probably a better way to say it. When Dad is found in the crawl space, Mom tries to help. She offers a solution, but Dad says no. Because outside of working themselves to death, men are also expected not to ask or accept any help. You have to do it on your own. Otherwise, you're quote-unquote not a real man. And then there's also this fear that you're the main load-bearing structure of your household. And if someone tries to help move you, everything might come crumbling down around you. So that was the sad tale of the Principal Post. What I believe is Junji Ito's worst story. Now, it's not completely worthless. My dislike for it isn't really passionate. Short enough that I recommend people read it just to see it for themselves, but what do you all think? Do you like the principal post? Do you think it's funny? Does the tragedy or mystery speak to you in any way? And if you disagree and think the story's great, then tell me why you like it. I love hearing a different perspective on a piece of art that I do not care for. But despite my dislike for it, I'm glad that I read it, and I'm also over the moon due to the fact that this story is in the exact same volume as the story that has the guy getting his gooch ate out by the hammerhead shark.